Hey there, Python programmers, and welcome back to Brad Codes. In today's lesson, I want to talk about functions. We've definitely already written a function or two together, but don't think we officially took the time to talk about them, so we gotta do so now. Again, kind of like with our while loops, for loops, like there's code that we may want to use again. So similar but different to those loops, we can write a function so that we can choose when we want to write or execute that code over again. In Python, it's real simple because there's really only one keyword or one prominent keyword called def, and that is used to make a function. Or eventually we'll talk about methods, which are really just functions that are part of a class. So we need the def keyword, and then we want to name it something. And again, we should give it a good, meaningful name. In snake case, so I'm going to go with is_even for this function. That's what we're going to call it. And then we want to open up a pair of parentheses. This is where we store something called parameters or arguments. Technically the same thing. When we define a function, they are parameters, and then when we invoke or call or use a function, the values we give them to basically take the place of those parameters are arguments. For this is_even one, we are just going to take in a number. We'll call it num, because again, nice, easy, and readable. And then we want to use a colon like we've been doing with our if and while and for loop blocks, except this is a more significant colon. This is going to open up the function block. So now everything that we want to be in this function does need to be indented. We're going to write a small function here that takes in basically it'll be an integer and does a little math to tell us if that is an even or an odd number. Now, something we really want to do with a function, you don't have to, but it's convention, and it ultimately builds documentation for you. It is called a docstring. It should be a multi-line string as the first string in the body of a function, and you really just want to say what your function is going to do. So this is a function, F-U-N-C-T, that takes in an integer as an argument and returns if that integer is even or not. And because it's a multi-line string, again, we can choose to pick wrap it anywhere we want. Cool. So again, that is to document our functions. Now again, we can pretty much write whatever Python code we want inside a function. So let's do something like if our number, I'm going to use the modulo here. Modulo 2, meaning if our number is divided by 2, will it remain, well, its remainder equal 0. We hopefully know that if the number modulo 2, or again, remainder divided by 2, remainder equals 0. Basically, it says that that number is divisible by 2 and needs to be an even number. Cool. So in this scenario, we could do something like print it's even. Yay! Awesome. And then we can just have an else case scenario here. Again, because if it's not even, clearly it needs to be an odd number. So here we can print it's odd, not even. Again, either of these are cool. This ultimately is most of the body of our function. So again, what do we do if we want to actually use this function? And I am missing a colon here on my else. Cool. We have to call or invoke the function. And the way we do that is we have to call its name. And then again, this is going to be where the argument parameters we're talking about. When we defined our function up here and put in num, we said we're going to have a single parameter. So now we do have to provide a value. Again, it's going to be called an argument here. Let's test this twice. So we'll use for. Don't want to complicate the math too much today, so we'll go with 5 as our other value. Give it a save, and let's see what we got. 0, 7. First one is even, second one is odd. Pretty cool. Now there are a little bit more to functions, so let me go ahead and print is even and is odd. Ooh. Oh, is even, and we need one there. That looks like we have too many brackets. There we go. Now let's give it a run again, and note we see still we're getting it's even and it's odd, but we got these things called none. So ideally a function should also return something. We're gonna define some returns shortly, but if we forget to do it, if we leave out a return, what ultimately happens behind the scenes is Python puts one in, and it does this, because if we do not define a return, it will implicitly define a return of none. Now again, we maybe want to make this more useful. How about if this returns true if we have an even number and false if not? That makes sense to me. So here we can return true in this scenario, and our other else we will return false. One thing to note about returns, we can define multiple ones, but each function can only end one time. So again, either the number is going to be even or odd, and will either return true or false. We can't return multiple times. When you return from a function, it ends the function, so that function does not happen anymore. Important thing to know about returning. Let's now give this a run, see what we've got, and look at that. We're still getting our prints. We could take them out, but I'm cool with leaving them. But we are also returning the value of true if it is in fact even, and the value of false if it is in fact odd. One last little tidbit I'll throw in here. You don't have to do this, but you can document your returns of a function. Totally optional. You do it right here after you've defined your parameters and before the colon to open up the function block. And what you do is you kind of make what looks like an arrow, and then you just want to say what is the return value going to be. For this one, we're returning a Boolean. Otherwise, you would just say string, list, int, whatever you're returning. Again, this is only for documentation purposes. It does not in any way enforce these. Last thing I'll show is, hey, that whole docstring I was mentioning. And again, there's a good reason for it. So we can call help on our function. Let's see what happens when we do. Ultimately, what it just did in our terminal is popped up the built-in help for this function. And now we see right here our docstring and documentation. Again, the isEven function is going to need to take in a single parameter, and it's going to return a Boolean, and then here we see our docstring. So again, if we do take the time to add a docstring, can even document the return, we're basically building the help menu for our function. Hope you enjoyed this lesson. As always, like this video if you have enjoyed it. Follow the channel, and I will bring you more coding videos shortly. That's it for today. See you all soon, Python.